Before we start our lesson today, I want you to think about if a woman has the same ability as a man. Well, in my opinion, a woman physically might be weaker than a man, but mentally, no, definitely not. A woman's intelligence is not weaker at all. In history, we have seen lots of outstanding women in different fields, such as brilliant scientists, smart CEOs, talented musicians, creative writers. And in recent years, there have been more and more political leaders, right? And then I tend to think that there should be more if women had not been discouraged from developing their potentials. A person with very traditional notion might think that ultimately a woman's place is home. To be sure, they'll get married, have children, and they will be busy taking care of their family members, cooking, doing a lot of housework. So why bother to go to a university, right? And then, does that just happen in the Eastern cultures? How about in Western countries? Let's take the USA as an example. The USA is considered to be a young and modern country, right? So could the women in the USA being given more rights? Surprisingly, maybe not. Okay, so your text. In American society, women have long struggled for the same rights as men. So they put a lot of efforts, okay, to achieve the goal, to enjoy the same rights as men. The fight for equal rights for women began before the Civil War during the anti-slavery protests. Okay, so that started even before the Civil War. And of course, you understand the term. A civil war is a war fought within the same country, right? Like in China, in Korea, and later on in Vietnam, there were civil wars. And the American Civil War is also very famous, right? Okay, it's the war between the North and the South during the time when people protest against slavery system. And then at that time, the North basically is more industrial, and then the South agricultural. So the farmers in the South, they wanted to keep the black slaves to work on the farms. However, the people in the North kind of like sympathized with black slaves. So they wanted them to enjoy the freedom, right? The equal rights. So led by, at the time, a USA President, Lincoln, right? And then the outcome. The North won the victory. So black people were free, and the slavery system in the USA was abolished. All right? And then women started to arguing that human rights were as important for black people as they were for whites. Women also stated that it was equally important for them to have the same rights as men. Okay, if black people could have the same rights, why can't women? So they stated, okay, their opinion. To state as a verb is to say something very clearly. And then after the war, women began the women's suffrage movement. Suffrage means the right to vote. However, it was not until 1920 that the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was passed, giving women the right to vote. So it actually took them a long time. The Civil War happened around 1860s. So like more than half a century passed. Finally, women in the USA were given the right to vote. Okay, and then as in the 19th Amendment, okay, to the U.S. Constitution. So the word Constitution with a capitalized C, big C, is the foundation, the basic law for the country, right? And then later on, when people people thought that the basic laws were not enough, were not sufficient. We needed to have more, to add more laws to the Constitution. So they had the extra laws, okay, called amendment. For much of history, the U.S. has been a patriarchal society. Okay, so the word patriarchal means a patriarchal society is a society controlled, ruled by males. And what's the opposite word for patriarchal? Some societies, especially in the primitive societies, it might be controlled, ruled by females. So you just need to take out the first letter, patriarchal, replace P with M, matriarchal. That means there's a society that dominated, controlled by female. In Spanish, a father is called a padre, and madre is the mother. So it's very easy. You just have to think that papa and mama, right? So start with P is dominated by males, okay, and start with M, okay. Matriarchal will be a society that controlled by women. So this type of society diminishes a woman's identity in a patriarchal society, okay. They try to lessen, to decrease females' identity. I think, okay, you are just behind a man. You have to follow, you just support your husbands. First of all, a woman in the U.S. traditionally takes the man's family name when she marries. So let's say, so it's completely different, right? The identity. Let's say Miss Carter got married with a Mr. Carpenter. And then originally, she was Miss Carter. And then after marriage, she becomes Mrs. Carpenter. So her family name, her original family name was just taken out, was not there. Okay, so that's why we said that in a patriarchal society, they diminishes the woman's identity. And family history is traced through the man's name. Yeah, so the female side, the family, you just can't be recognized anymore. So consequently, a woman loses her family identity. Let's say, Hillary Clinton, right? She's also outstanding, very well-known politician, right? But we only know because her husband's Mr. Clinton. So she's Mrs. Clinton. But what's her original family name? We don't know. Okay. And next, secondly, all private property is registered in a man's name. The property, the land, the houses, etc. Okay, it's just registered. It's listed under the man's name, and property is passed from father to son. So that reminds me of in the ancient time in China, and people say like a virtuous woman, a woman with virtue, Okay, what is she supposed to do? Before she was married, she will have to obey her father. After she got married, she will obey her husband. And then after the husband died, she will have to obey her son. Is that right? Because of this, when the husband dies, the wife must establish her own credit as if she were a student just out of high school. Basically, she got no property under her name. And then if you want to apply for a credit card, and the bank will ask about do you have the right kind of income, the right kind of property of your own, so that they want to make sure you can pay back the money you spend on. So just like a high school graduate maybe, if he wants to apply for a credit card, basically he doesn't have any history of any financial establishment. So the woman, in the case, in a traditional family, okay, she would just be like a student just out of high school. Didn't have any credit in a sense. Things are changing, however. Today, many women keep their maiden names when they marry. So instead of calling themselves as Mrs. Carpenter, the husband's name, okay, they keep their maiden name. A maiden is a young woman, not married, a married woman. So they choose to remain to use their maiden name. So they might call themselves as Ms. MS, so Miss Carter. So people have no idea whether she's married. And so, but while others use their maiden names as well as their husband's names, okay, that happens in our society, but it's not really a practice popularly used anymore, okay. So you simply keep your maiden name with your original family name and plus with an extra family name. So you have two family names. One's your own family, and then the other your husband's family. So for example, if Mary Jones marries John Smith, she might use the name Mary Jones Smith. Moreover, many couples have their property legally registered in both of their names. So they will kind of solve the problems if they want to get a divorce. Okay, they have to decide upon this is mine. Okay, I got a job. I earned some of the income to get a property maybe. Okay, yeah. So times have been changed. The Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution was proposed in 1972, finally, okay, the Equal Rights Amendment. So they added another one, okay, to the Constitution. It says that equal rights should not be denied, okay, on account of, because of sex, okay. So even women should own the equal rights. It shouldn't be denied. To deny something is to say no, right? Yeah. For example, it would make it illegal for the military to dismiss a female officer because she's pregnant. Okay, so it would be illegal, okay, in the military if a female officer, she's pregnant, she's having a baby, and you dismiss her. That's against the law. And then, likewise, an airline cannot fire a stewardess because she gets married. They have the right to work even if they are pregnant, even if they are married. Okay, so we call stewardess, the word end with ESS, and of course, just like waitress, actress, it means a female, all right? But then you might use a more neutral term. You can call her a flight attendant instead. However, it has yet to be ratified by all 50 states. As we all know, there are 50 states in the USA, so it's United States, 50 states united together. And then each state might have their own state laws. And then this 19th Amendment to the Constitution has not yet ratified by all the 50 states. To ratify is to approve, Consequently, as a result, it has not been made part of the U.S. Constitution yet. Women still do not receive equal pay for equal work. Sometimes male and a female do very similar work. However, the men might receive higher salary, so it's kind of unfair, Today, the women's movement, they are still trying, they are still making efforts in the United States, and then there are something they are still working for. All right, they are trying to stop violence against women. Okay, so maybe physically. Okay, a husband might beat his wife, and then to eliminate sexual harassment. Okay, so like in the office maybe. Okay, so the boss might touch the employees, or sometimes verbal harassment. They will say something that make you feel uncomfortable. And then they want to end racism against women of color, okay, instead of white collar. Of course, white is a color, but when we say a man of color, it just means non-white people, okay, black, yellow, etc. So end this kind of racism, okay. So the ex-USA president, the previous USA President Trump, he's notorious as a racist, right? Because he says he wanted to build a wall to separate the USA and the neighbor Mexico. And then he kind of like not welcome people from Middle East, right? Okay, so racist. And then they are trying to establish a national child care system and to establish a national health care system. Yeah, I think it's also something that the UN, United Nations, they are working hard for, okay, for the welfare and the health care for women and the children. And then the last part, to ensure the continuation of legal abortion, okay, to get an abortion during the pregnancy, when a woman is pregnant, and then for some reason she doesn't want to keep the child, she might go to a hospital to get the operation, okay, and this kind of operation to end, to discontinue the pregnancy is called abortion, okay. But then in the USA, different states, as we say, they might have different laws. So some states are against abortion, so it might be illegal. And then some females in this movement, okay, they try to make it legalized, right? So, and then I want you to tell me, in our society, to find a particular area where sexual discrimination still exists. Would you leave your message, please? Thank you for watching.